Hello and welcome to this video on Azure DevOps. I know you're wondering if we're trying to learn how to become a Dynamics functional consultant, why are we really learning about Azure DevOps? Your question is correct. The reason why we're learning Azure DevOps is because it is really a part of becoming a Dynamics consultant as well. So when you go on a project, um, you will be asked to work in a certain setting, in a way of working. So Azure DevOps is one of the tools that's most frequently used when you work, especially in an Agile or a DevOps setting. And this is a tool that really supports the process of working Agile or working DevOps as well. But what is it really? It sounds very complicated when I say Azure and I say DevOps, but it is super easy. It's just a drag and drop tool. And if you're familiar with this, it really gives you an advantage when you're working on a project. If you've heard of Azure DevOps, it's fine. If not, then maybe it's nice to know about who are really the users of Azure DevOps. It would be you as a functional consultant because this really helps you see the things that you're going to be working on. But it's also used by product owners. So when you work on a product like Dynamics 365 Customer Service, there is a vision behind it. There is going to be someone that's called the product owner going to be responsible of further developing this because what you get standard from Microsoft will be limited up to an extent and it needs to be extended to suit the business needs. And the representation of that business is basically the product owner. Product owner identifies the gap, but also talks to a lot of business stakeholders to really see, okay, what is the tool missing? How can we further develop it? What kind of automations we can have? What are the possibilities we can have for our agents to be more productive on? And how can we help the supervisors to get more possibilities on reporting part of view? These are some of the examples that you would hear on a daily life. But this is really not the responsibility of functional consultant. The product owner is basically in charge of ensuring that there is enough work for the team and that this backlog, and that's why it's called backlog. The product owner keeps adding items here that can be picked up by the development team to work on. Okay. I've created a few examples of how a requirement would look like. So for a specific product that's on a case, if the product is smart brew, the case should automatically be set to high priority. And when you open this, what they call is work backlog item or PBI or product backlog item, if I expand it, it has a description, it has an acceptance criteria. And the description basically is for the product owner to mention more details such as, yeah, what is the business value behind this implementation. But also there may be a tech lead in the project who will be adding the way how you are going to build it because a problem can be solved by 100 ways. What's the best way? And that's where the tech lead or an architect jumps in and basically writes it down for you. So depending on what kind of setting you are in, sometimes developers have the responsibility to choose their own method and just build it. But in some settings, you may also have an architect who is basically ensuring that it's built in the most optimum way. Okay, so now we've had a look at one of the work items, and we have had a look at the backlog as well. So I'm going to quickly zoom out, so that we can have a full view. In the same way, we have a different requirement. An agent should be able to specify at case if the item is if the type is claimed. This is all blah 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 because you're not really working in a business, but I'm just trying to create some requirements for you so that you can get a hang of how it looks like. So the requirement is an agent. So basically that would be a customer service agent. So I can rephrase it, a customer service agent, because we're talking in the context of Dynamics customer service case management. That's why you'd see these terms appearing again and again, like agents and supervisors. So a customer service agent should be able to specify at case if it's a type claim. Because at this moment, when I go on a case, there is no way for me to specify if it's type of a claim and what a claim basically means. And these are all explanations when that the product owner would also be mentioning what is really a claim, what do we need to do with it. When you go for a subject, you have a lot of things that you can select from that basically sort of categorizes the case or tells you what the subject of the case is. Here you need to have an extra option of if it's of type claim because sometimes a case can also lead to customers asking money for something that went wrong. So I'm trying to build a whole story around it so that we can have a few requirements, but then so for us to realize how these requirements really look like and how we support the business process using technology. In the same way, as as a quality agent, I can approve quality records. So if I'm a type of agent that's basically dedicated on the quality department, I'm able to approve quality records. I'm expecting that when you work on a project, you may have more or less text than what I'm showing you right now. But I'm also not trying to overcomplicate things for you all by giving, adding detailed descriptions. Just enough for it to make some sense. And then as a legal agent, I can also approve legal investigations, which makes sense because legal should only be approving things that are meant for them. You don't want legal to approve things from quality. So these are the things, these are some of the user stories, or these are some of the requirements. You could call it any of those things that a product owner would be adding to the backlog. And the backlog keeps on growing and growing and growing because that is basically product owner while you are developing at the same time a product owner is busy having discussions with the business to see how we can further develop the tool to make it more interesting for the agents and if need be add more security automations or other kind of things. But this is more for the product owner. Where do you chime in as a consultant? And that's why I needed this background story so that I can really connect you to the next step. These items are prioritized by product owner, and then you work in sprints. So a sprint can have 1 or 2 weeks. With that basically means a sprint basically means in the next given time. Let's say if a sprint is for 2 weeks, a developer. So I'm going to open sprints. Everyone who's a part of this sprint will be working on these items, starting from the top, going all the way to the bottom. So these items are also added to the sprint now. Let's say for now I have added all of them, but um, normally when you go in a setting, the backlog item has imagine 100 items, and per sprint you pick 5, 10, depending on how big the team is. So these items are, I'm going to collapse it so that you get a better view. And this is basically where you as a developer have to work with. All these PBIs will be added to the sprint. And then if you want to pick a PBI, just click on unassigned, and then it will load all the existing users. I choose Suyash. So I'm assigning it to myself, and then that's how I indicate to other developers or team members that I have started working on this case. Okay, so I'm going to keep it unassigned for now. But what is this plus? What is new, active, resolve, close? Let's have a look at that as well. A PBI has a life cycle phase, or a requirement has a life cycle phase. It starts off with a backlog where product owner adds details, and then it's added to a sprint where it's being developed, starting from new to active, so that indicating someone has started working on it, to close, that it's completed. For bugs, you can also use resolve. But when you really start working with the sprints, there's also a session that's called sprint planning, where you detail out what are the steps that you will be executing for a requirement. So I sprint, let's say my sprint started on 23rd of January. So this is not really a good example. I'm going to put it on a day that's after it. So let's say the sprint starts from 30th until 10th. That's okay. Okay, so this is my current sprint, and you see this is also indicated. You can have more sprints. So this is for the next 10 days, but then after the next 10 days, it will be iteration 2, and then you will be seeing new items in iteration 2, or any items that were not completed will go to iteration 2. But if we take an example that if the sprint starts on 30th, so let's say 2 days from now, then what this means is that today we'll have as internally a session with all the developers or the part of development team to basically detail out the items. So they are high level requirements, but the steps that are exactly needed to be executed will be added. So that's so for this one. Let's say we need to create a Power Automate flow, test, update documentation, update manual. So you would expect these kind of tasks, and they would also have um, the number of hours that you expect to complete. Let's say the Power Automate flow takes 1 hour. So I say 1 hour, and then the testing takes 1 hour as well. So and sorry, and the documentation takes zero point 0.5 hours. Then we say zero point 0.5, and manual updating takes zero point 0.5. So that's how you really try to quantify these requirements into the time it takes. And as a developer, you already know how long will it take for you to do these things. And this is just a preliminary estimate. You It can be completed earlier, it can be completed later, because you always run into things, or you always sometimes you're so efficient that things go pretty well. So this is how normally every PBI would be detailed out. And let's say if the sprint starts today, so and I am the first one to pick up the task, or anyone can just choose the task they would like to pick up in the team. So I say I am cleaning this one, and I will start working with this task. So I mark it as completed, and you see that yeah, this is. But the moment I drag and drop it to active, the status is changed to active. I'll refresh it. I was expecting this state to also go to active automatically, but if it doesn't go, then you can change it, indicating that this item is being worked upon it. And when you finally created the Power Automate flow, so let's say if we go ahead and create a Power Automate flow, and then we say, okay, it's done, and then you mark it to close. And then the testing needs to be done. Normally, a testing is not done by the same person who builds. So this task could be assigned to one of your colleagues. And then you can assign it to one of your colleagues, or ask them to pick this task up, and then they can pick it up and they can mark it to active. And the moment they mark it to active, it's automatically assigned to them. And then if the testing is complete, it's closed as well. The same goes for documentation. You update the documentation, you mark it closed, active. So I'm starting to work now. When I've completed, I mark it to close. And then I would expect this to automatically be closed as well. I think it's not working, but these things can definitely be automated. And then when you mark it to close, then it's basically indicating that this item has been completed. Then when the next time you go back to your sprint and you see what other items I can pick up, this is something, and you do the same exercise like you did here. But one of the things that is important is you don't see the tasks here. The tasks are not created when the sprint starts. The tasks, individual tasks, are created when the planning happens or during the planning. And that's one of the sprint events that you need to remember. Another sprint event that you may have to remember is that every requirement that is created gets a sort of estimate from the development team. So there is also a refinement session where a user story will be discussed with what the product owner wants to achieve, what's the business value, and then the team basically comes up with individual estimates, and then a final estimation is set on it. So when I click on this, there will be an option to also show story points, and that basically reflects the effort. So let's say, and this is very random, so it's not reflected in days or number of hours, it's random. You always compare a user story using a frame of reference, using complexity and how big it is to execute. But this is something you won't be able to get it in this session. This is something when you go in a setting and you see how teams work, you would really get the hang of it. So if you go on a project and you don't know what the frame of reference is, or how do you really code story points, maybe it's nice to check first with the Scrum Master, and that's my connect to Scrum Master. How do you really use a relative framework to code story points within the development team? And the Scrum Master basically is the one who is ensuring that the team is working really Scrum or Agile, which means that yeah, if there are items that are too big and cannot be part of one, cannot be completed in this sprint, it needs to be broken down into furthermore items. So the requirements are intended, and that should be the case. Should be as small as possible. This ensures it is minimum risk, and then you can easily complete it and just yeah, be done with it. I could have made a requirement where it comprised of all these requirements in one go, but then this is where it becomes dangerous because if one of these requirements get a bug or some issues and you're not able to complete it, all the other user stories are also in danger. So that's why. But if you split them in four parts, then you've completed three user stories, PBIs, what do you call them, requirements, and then that's okay. Then at least you have to showcase that, yeah, in this sprint we completed 10 PBIs or 10 user stories or 10 requirements. I'm saying all the three words because one of these words will be used when you go on a project, and it's super important to be a good listener and under, and understand. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Here it's referred to as user story. So from now onwards, I'll say user story, but you get the idea. They can be called user story, they can be called requirements, and they can be called PBIs as well. So that's PBI is basically product backlog item. We talked a lot about the process itself. We talked about the roles, but I want to highlight the most important part as a functional consultant and as a developer is to just focus on the sprints. This is where, as a developer or as a functional consultant, you'll be working on is you'll be working on the tasks, user stories, and ensuring that they are completed. That's the end of it. I hope this session was helpful for you. I hope this gives you a little bit of context on what is DevOps, what is Agile, what is Azure DevOps. My recommendation would be to just get familiar with the tool. As I mentioned, the only thing that you need to worry about is, and the only page you need to care about is the sprints part. And these sprints will be automatically added to the sprint. You don't need to add them. They will all be done either by the product owner or by the, I would bet, on Scrum Master. And on 30th of January, let's say I take this sprint as an example, when you log in, this is where you start off with, claim your items and start working on the tasks, and then you are good to go. I hope this session was helpful. I hope it gives you a bit of insight on how it works from a process point of view and from different roles that you will be working on when you start working as a Dynamics consultant. If you have any questions, any remarks, any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments and I'll be able to get back to you. In the meantime, happy learning.